How's it going, guys? Today we are going to be working on a BR600 backpack blower. I had a customer bring it to me, and let me show you this bad boy. There it is, BR600. It's going to need a valve adjustment. I will show you what the complaint is. Let's do this, boys. The customer brought me this and said that it wouldn't start. It won't crank. You know, that could mean a lot of things. So she laid it on the table and she, look at there. Well, that's going to be a valve adjustment right there. So I'm going to go over how to do that. I know there's probably a lot of other videos out there on that, but I'm going to show you how I do it. I'm going to try to be detailed as possible, guys. Let's do it. Alright, since this thing is so hard to pull over, this thing has got a automatic compression release built into the exhaust valve. So what I'll do, I'm going to take this spark plug out so I can show you. And be real careful pulling this boot off right here, because you will pull its little guts out. We'll all be looking for a job then. Yep. Be very careful pulling that. I'm going to pop this spark plug out because I've already pulled the air filter off. There's no fuel running out of it or anything. The air filter itself is dry. Let me just show you. All these screws we're taking off on this thing are going to be T27 Torx, and that's really all you need to disassemble the whole thing. So the air filter's dry. It's not flooding. Sometimes it could be a flooding issue that'll do that. So I pull the spark plug out. The spark plug is not wet. The muffler is not dripping fuel or nothing like that. So we know it's not hydro locked. So it pulls fine there. So let's pull the starter off, the cover off. There's 3 screws holding this on. The starter cover. And the screws, these screw right into the aluminum block, and you can see they're more of a fine thread. I'll show you in here in a second. There are 4 screws holding this cover on here, so there's 2 at the top. And see, the screws that go into plastic are more of a coarse thread, but that's not always the case. And I will show you what I mean here in a second. And there's 2 more screws way buried down here, about a half a mile inside. There's 1 loose. And there's 2 loose. Alright. So we've got all 4. Feed the boot through the hole. And also, this plastic cover has got these built-in rubber mounts and there's a little nipple on top of the fuel tank, which this actually helps support the whole motor. So you have to pull that up a little bit and get this cover off. Yeah, there we go with that. And we got to pull this cover off. This covers the valve cover. It covers the whole top end of the engine. So the first thing we need to do, pop loose these coil kill wires. Gentle. Don't pull its little guts out either. Pop them loose. Right there. Pull it out of that little hole. See how it's pinched inside of there? Just up and out of the way. There's 1 screw here. It goes into plastic. This other screw down here, it goes into the aluminum block itself too. But see, it's also coarse thread, so Just make sure you put the screws back exactly where they go every time you take something apart. Okay, now we can get this cover off. And when you put it back together, make sure this wire goes on the inside and it fishes through there. And also pay attention to this, because this goes on the inside and this goes on the outside. It's got to fit just perfect. If it doesn't fit perfect, it ain't on right. So, what did I do with them other screws? Well, here is. Here's the valve cover. That's where your intake and exhaust valves are, inside of here. So let's pull that off. You've got one screw holding this valve cover on, and under this screw is a copper washer. Little copper washer. That is very important for sealing. This thing is got to be perfectly sealed. Everything is sealed. If it's sucking air anywhere, it's going to run terribly. Alright, there's your valve cover. Make sure there's no holes wore in it. Nothing like that. Set that aside. And your valve cover gasket. Always replace the valve cover gasket. You can see this one is compressed. They get hard and brittle. They can suck air, they won't seal. And what you do is you buy a kit. You can get these on Amazon, any local Stihl dealer. 4282 007 1001. This kit comes with the feeler gauge you need. Right there. Comes with the new valve cover gasket. And it also comes with that little copper O-ring, that little washer, seal, whatever you want to call it. You have to replace those every time. For any reason you ever take that off, don't ever put it back on. No matter how good this looks. Because once you install these and they get compressed, you're not going to get them to seal again. Nope. Okay. Let me show you guys what I'm talking about with the valves. Okay, this engine has all the attributes of a two-stroke. It's sealed, it has no crankcase, but it is a four-stroke, four-cycle engine. Intake, exhaust. Okay, there's the exhaust. The piston's coming up, blowing out the exhaust. As soon as it gets top dead center, it will suck in more air-fuel mixture. Comes up to the top, compresses, power stroke goes down. The exhaust valve opens and the piston comes back up and starts all over again. So this is top dead center, but it's not on the compression stroke. If we go 180 degrees, it will be on the compression stroke at top dead center. So I just like to make sure it's clean. Clean as my shirt. So I'll just lay this in there and just kind of feel. There is top dead center right there. That is perfect top dead center on the compression stroke. So these should be loose. This one feels real loose. Now the compression release is built into this exhaust valve. And I will show you how to adjust that. In that kit comes a feeler gauge. And, well, that thing is paper thin. And it's got this very narrow end on it because this rocker arm has a piece that comes down on each side that covers the valve stem so that it stays. I've seen them get so loose that when you over rev it, float the valves, this can actually ride up on top of that valve stem and you have no compression. Well, the problem with this is it's got too much compression. So this exhaust valve is too loose. And when you go to crank it, I don't know if you can see it or not, but right before that exhaust valve opens, it's going to push a little bit. Do you see my finger? Do you see that? Just like that. So, back up a little bit. Nope. That valve is so loose, the compression release ain't actuating at all. So let's find top dead center again. there. And just put your feeler gauge in there. I can hit it. Golly, that's just loose as a goose. These two nuts are lock nuts. They're not going to move on their own, but it is a 5/16, or actually it's an 8mm, but either one will work. So I just want to put that in there. I just want to take and tighten that just a little bit. See, it's still just very, very loose. Very, very loose. Tighten it some more. Oh, that's almost too tight, but it's got a little bit of drag on it. As long as you can stick it in there and it goes in without bending it. That's a little on the tight side, but I believe that's good. Here comes another train. I think that's a little too tight. Let me back off just a little bit. Just a hair. It don't take much. Okay, that's good drag right there. That's perfect. Now the intake, oh, that's loose too. Look at that. So we'll give that a little snug. Give that a little snuggie. Still pretty loose. Give it a little more snug. Oh, that's too tight. Look at that. I can almost pull this blower across the table. That's so tight. A little bit. Yep. I believe that's good. Now let me spin her around again. See if you can catch that. Oh, there it goes. Oh, did you see it? That's the compression release. Right there. Right there. And that's all it takes to be able to relieve enough of that compression to be able to pull it. So there we go. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to make sure this thing is absolutely clean. Absolutely clean, the gasket surface. Oh, I don't want to squirrel this in there, so I'll just stick my fingers in there and a little carb cleaner. Make sure you get all that gunk out of there. Yeah. I'll just any oil, fuel mixture that's on that surface, just spray it off a little bit. Okay. So all we want to do is make sure it's clean and dry. It's not damaged anywhere. So we will lay the new gasket on there. It's got little ears all the way around it. That's going to hold this gasket in place for us. Right there. It's not behind that ear. Right there. There it goes. There it goes. It's laid down just perfect. Now, we'll take this screw. We'll take the old washer seal copper doohickey thingamabob there. See that right there. We're going to toss that in the garbage. And I want to make sure this is perfectly clean. You know, see the oil and fuel coming off of it. Make sure there's no contaminants. I mean, it's just like putting a valve cover on a car. We've all done that. Just make sure everything's clean. Okay. We will lay that on there. And we'll make sure everything is sitting just perfect. Now we got our old screw, and we will take our brand new copper washer and put on there. Just run it back down in there like that. I dare not use an impact putting this thing back together. I ain't gonna do it. I ain't gonna damn do it. We'll run that down there like that. Just make it pretty snug. And just, yeah, there we go. All right. Now, all we got to do is put it back together. She ought to be good. Okay, let's see. First thing I'm going to do, if y'all want to watch this, I'm going to go ahead and just film me putting this thing back together. I will use my impact on the, just to run them up a little bit. But I'm not evil. I'll find what I do with all the screws. What did I do with the screws? Okay, make sure this goes back behind that. Right there. That goes on the outside. We will run this up. Just make sure that this wire is back behind them two ears and stick it back in that little cradle like that, just like that. See how it just goes up there so snugly? Everything's lined up. I ain't gonna tighten it with it. Give it a little oomph, Okay, now don't forget to hook your wires back up to the coil. One there, one there. You can go ahead and put your spark plug back in it because it ain't gonna hurt a thing. I probably will end up doing that though. Oomph. Alright, I'm gonna lay it over. Now we'll fish the plug wire through the opening. Plug boot. Now just remember these nipples have to go in the rubber. Now we can work it down, make sure nothing's binding. Everything lays down in there just perfect without having to force anything. So far so good. Nobody's gotten hurt yet. I said I wasn't going to do. Snug. Little snug. Little snug. Little snug. Okay. We'll put the starter back on it. Just a little bit. Put the air filter back on it. Make sure the air filter is all the way in there, flush, perfectly in, nothing's pinched. Nothing's pinched. Alright. Oh, Lordy, Lordy, Lordy. Okay. How many of you think I'm going to forget to plug that back in? Yeah. Make sure it's on there good. Shove it. Give it a few purges. make sure the switch is on. I don't want to lock it. Choke. Well, that is gooder than enough right there, boys. That's a BR600 for you guys. Thank you so much for watching my video.